So, of course, the last Metallica studio record Cliff appeared on is Master of Puppets. What was the vibe like in the studio during the making of that record?
We had this vision of Master of Puppets in our heads, and it was all the same vision, and that's why that album is so great, because everybody wanted to go where we ended, and we all sort of pulled in the same direction, so it was really good.
When it came to the title track, Master of Puppets, did you feel that there was going to be something special about this song?
Yeah, we kind of knew that also because we knew it was going to be the title track. Metallica always do serious pre-production, so we already knew the running order once we started recording the album. We didn't record them in order, but, we knew that was going to be significant. Also because the lyrics are so strong. And, the whole story about who controls your life and what you're doing, it was, it's kind of a universal story. So we knew that right off the bat. We didn't know that they were going to play it like 40 years later, but,
Yeah, for sure. I think some of the great things about that song are the tempo changes and the complete changes in melody. I remember at a Metallica concert I went to, when they played Master of Puppets, right around the 3.5 minute mark during the interlude, everyone in the crowd basically started singing the interlude melody.
People know that by heart. It's incredible. And it's one of those things that you do those solo or melody parts, and once crowds pick up on that, they really love that. But I mean, there's no way you can say whether that's going to work or not. You just have to get lucky. But I mean, well written. There you go.
Yeah, for sure. In another interview of yours, I remember you mentioning that during the Master of Puppets session for Sanitarium particularly, James was reluctant to record vocals for one of the high parts of that song because he didn't want to go that high.
Yeah.
What was the story there exactly?
Well, it's difficult to sing high, especially if you're a man. I don't know whether we cheated by speeding the tape down. I know that some of the songs on Master of Puppets, we actually recorded them lower and then very speeded them up so that it got even tighter. That's one of the tricks you can use in the studio. But yeah, I can't remember that specific thing. It was just hard for him to do that, and of course, if you can skip it, you want to do it. It's work. So yeah.
And how is he as a singer to work with? Is he easy to work with in studio?
Oh, yeah, he's fabulous. James is the kind of person that once he's in a working situation, he's totally focused, and he just wants to perform as well as possible, and he knows when he fucks up. I mean, if you sit doing a rhythm guitar tracks and he fucks up, he stops immediately, you just go back a bit, punch in, and continue. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's a very skilled musician.
That's awesome. So, in terms of all 3 records you worked on, I'm sure that the gear that they used changed.
Oh, yeah.
Did it make a significant difference to how you approached recording them?
Yeah, it actually did, because on Master of Puppets, they had the Mesa Boogie endorsement. So we got these Mesa Boogie amps that we were going to use on the album. And I thought they were kind of goofy because, they didn't really do, when it's at treble and you gave it more, it actually got duller. There was a lot of stuff going on with those. But, I mean, in the end, they ended up sounding really, really good. Obviously, Master of Puppets is sounding pretty well. But I actually inserted on the insert loop at the back of the amp, I inserted like a professional parametric studio EQ, so I could actually sit in the control room and EQ the amp, the actual amp itself, because I needed to scoop out some of that mid-range, and there was a lot of stuff we did on that. On my old website, which is still up, I have a lot of these notes from the Master of Puppet sessions, and they all have the settings for that parametric EQ on the insert. So yeah, you can go check that out.
Oh, definitely. For me, when it comes to that record, I think one of the underrated songs is Damage Inc. That 1-minute intro where there's all these different, echoey sounds. How did you guys get that?
That is all guitars recorded backwards. A bit like the beginning of Battery. It's the same thing with all those. That's, it's all backwards shit that you reset and and you just turn the chord progression around and you turn the tape around, and then once you play it back, you get that kind of freaky acid kind of sound. So yeah, most of that is backwards stuff. I haven't heard it recently, so but I'm sure if I sat down and heard it now, I would be able to tell you what it is. But yeah, a lot of it was probably backwards guitars.
That is awesome. In my opinion, another underrated track from that record is Orion. When it comes to songs like that, Orion and the Call of Cthulhu, these instrumental tracks, do you approach recording those songs differently because they're instrumental?
No, same approach. Just one job less. That was the lead vocal. But normally on instrumental songs there were like these huge solos. So actually, it's a bit more difficult to record instrumentals because once you don't have the vocals, you need a focus point. So you had to do really interesting, themes and solos and melodies all through the song to make sure that the listener is still paying attention, basically. So yeah, no, it was hard work.
Were you surprised that they had instrumental songs?
No, not really. Yeah, we did that already on the first album, so I was like, okay, no songs, great. I thought it was a bit long. What's the instrumental on Ride? Cthulhu, yeah. But I really like that, and I like the whole story about that. So, yeah.
Oh, for sure. Another great track, in my opinion, from Master of Puppets is Disposable Heroes. That song, to me, sounds like it could have also been on Injustice.
Yeah, it's where they're going after... I think what we did was that kind of thrash thing that we started on Ride the Lightning. We kind of perfect on Master of Puppets, and then, that's another thing I really like about the band. They don't repeat themselves. They don't do Master of Puppets 10 times like some artists. They do one great album and then they copy that like 15 times.
Yeah. In terms of Metallica's development and experimentation, one of the things I find interesting about the band's history is that James Hetfield was hesitant at first about being a singer.
He hated it. It was the painstaking moments when James had to go sing, he wouldn't do it. He just got more and more confident with, once you start selling 500,000 album copies, you kind of go, all right, then they must like it somehow. So I think his confidence grew. And I think the voice is an instrument as well, and he wanted to get better on that. Whether he took singing lessons, I have no idea. He never did when he was with me, when I recorded them. But for sure, his interest in what he could do with the vocal grew as the band matured.
And so in studio, how did he approach recording vocals on the 3 albums you did with the band? Was his approach different each time?
It got more and more serious, and he got better and better at it. We simply did, we did a couple of takes, run-throughs, that I kept as much as possible. And then once his voice was like warmed up and ready, we did it line by line from start to finish. And then most of the time we doubled a lot of the bits to make it sound thicker. So he sang it twice on top of each other, which is a skill and which he got better and better at. Because you need to know what you just did. Even when you do phrasing, you need to know what you did if you have to put one right on top of it. But sometimes you don't want it right on top because it sounds better when they shit like the studio stuff.
Yeah. So how have they grown over the years as people? For example, like we discussed before, James was a bit of a hesitant singer during Ride the Lightning, but by Master of Puppets and Injustice, he's really embracing it. How was that experience for you, seeing them grow and develop over time?
It made me really, really proud. Lars describes it pretty well, that they came from after have done Kill 'Em All as young kids who didn't have a clue about how to record an album, and he basically has the opinion that I taught them to record albums, which makes me pretty proud. But they've all grown into men. I think they've grown into wise and clever men. I know James has problems with his addictions, but I mean, who doesn't in this world? So that's his thing, and I'm sure he's going to tackle it. And if he falls back on it, yeah, well, it's fixable. So there's a lot of things going on in people's heads, but I think they've grown to become really, really good people, and very, very friendly, if you ask me.
When you first met Metallica in 1984 during the making of Ride the Lightning, what was your initial impression of them?
They were, in my opinion, a bunch of young kids with like fire in their ass. They were like fucking going 200 miles an hour, like 24/7. And it was actually inspiring that they had this energy and that they were willing to go the extra mile for that common project that was Metallica. It's what most bands have when they start out, but the way they've handled the project Metallica during the years is second to none. I think they've done a fabulous job of being themselves, being Metallica, and also taking care of the brand Metallica. And I think they've done a good job about that.
Have they kept that fire, in your opinion?
On and off, yeah. I think they're getting there again. I think the last album was killer. It was almost like, okay, let's do an album like in the old days. I was like, yes, please. I actually told Lars that what the fuck is it? What's it called? Hardwired to Self-Destruct. Yeah. He was asking what I thought about it, and I said, that's the first album you've done since, in 20 years that I wish I'd done. And he was like, that's the best criticism I've ever gotten.
That's awesome. And so we spoke a little earlier about how the changes in Metallica's gear from album to album caused you to modify how you recorded them to an extent, at least on a technical level. But equipment aside, did you change the way you approached working with them from album to album, or did you have more or less the same approach?
Well, I had more or less the same approach, and which is the approach I'm still having, which is make sure everybody is feeling good, because they're in recording an album is probably the apart from playing probably Madison Square Garden or royalty and stuff like that, it's the peak for every band, because whatever you do in the studio with me, people are going to talk about that for the rest of your life, because it's going to come out there. So we talk a lot about vibe with Metallica. The vibe has to be there. We start out by basically getting every gear in, making sure everybody feels comfortable doing all the sounds. And in the case of Metallica, we were always starting to be doing B-sides for singles, which was always like cover songs. Because, in a process in the studio, you always tend to get the sound right after a couple of songs. You always tweak and tweak and tweak. And in my opinion, it's stupid starting out with your very best song as the first song you record, and then once you've gotten to song 3, everything sounds the way it's supposed to. So we always started out doing some of the cover songs, and then once we got that out of the way and we thought every sound was like right, that bang where it was supposed to be, we'd start doing their songs.
That's awesome. And so Flemming, how did you personally get into music?
I've always liked music. I started fiddling with tape recorders when I was 12. And then we have like a program where when you're in the 9th grade, you go out, test a work situation. Like if you want to be a dentist, you go out and you look at what a dentist does for a week and, stuff like that. I ended up in a recording studio because I liked music. The guy that owned the studio asked me whether I wanted to start a new studio with him, because he could see that this was something I knew something about. And that's how I got into it.